Hello and welcome back to the Sheva Secrets Na or Nach series. In today's video, we're going to learn our final rule, rule number 10, the Vav HaChibbur. Let's dive in. Before we learn this rule, I want to just explain what the concept of a Vav HaChibbur is. In Hebrew, the Vav prefix can serve a few functions, and one of those functions is serving as a conjunction, meaning it's translated as the word and. So if you add a Vav before a word, it could simply be the prefix and. Now when you add a Vav with a Sheva underneath it, and the next letter also has a Sheva, what's gonna happen is there'll be two Shevas in a row. But instead of following our normal rules, the way the Hebrew grammar works, that first Vav with the Sheva, instead of being pronounced as Ve, that Vav HaChibbur, instead of being pronounced as Ve, it actually changes to a Shuruk and gets read as U. It's pronounced as U. There's an imaginary Aleph before this Shuruk, and it's read as U. And when that happens, when you have this Vav HaChibbur that is pronounced as U, this rule number 10 tells us that a Vav HaChibbur that's pronounced as U is followed by a Sheva Nach, a silent Sheva. So to say the rule clearly, if there is a Vav HaChibbur at the beginning of a word, which is the U sound, it's an opening Shuruk, the following letter, if it has a Sheva, it is a Sheva Nach. So let's see how we can spot it. You can see the word here that's shown on the bottom. The word is read as ulcha. There's two syllables. The first syllable is ul, which is the vav and the lamed, and the second syllable is cha, ulcha. Important, this is not a Sheva Na. If this were to be a Sheva Na, the way it would be read is ulecha. And people might get confused because the word lecha means you or yours, and you want to add the Vav HaChibbur. So you could see on the top, I put a Vav there, and really, this is what's happening. The word is velecha, and yours, but that's not how it's pronounced. When you have this Vav HaChibbur that's being added, Chibur, by the way, means a connection. It's like the word chaver. It's a connecting. It's a conjunction. It's an and prefix. When you have that vav before the word, that vav turns into an u, a shuruk, and the lamed that follows it, that sheva underneath it, turns into a sheva nach. So if you see, like what's on the screen, an u at the beginning of the word, that lamed that follows it, that is going to have a sheva nach, and this is read as ul cha. So let's look at some examples. The first example is uvne Yisrael, uvne, two syllables, uvne. The reason this is confusing for some is because we know that the word is bnei Yisrael, right? Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. The bet, if it's the first letter of the word and has a sheva underneath it, bnei, sheva b'rosh milah, rule number 1 tells us it's sheva na. Now what we're saying is, okay, but if there is a vav that's added before the word bene, what happens is that vav is pronounced as u, and this bene, the sheva underneath the bet, becomes a sheva nach, and it's read as uvne. And there's many people that will make this mistake because they'll know the word bene, but when it has the vav attached to it, the way it's pronounced is uvne. Example number 2, uvchol. This is a word that comes up in the first line of Shema Yisrael, of Ve'ahavta, which we'll look at in more detail in a moment. But we say uvchol levavecha. Uvchol. Now people will read this as bechol, ubechol, but that is not correct. Why? Because of rule number 10. The Vav HaChibbur, the Vav that comes preceding the word that is translated as and, that is pronounced as u, and the Sheva underneath the second letter is a Sheva Nach. Another example from the Shema Yisrael, example number 3, is Uv lech techa baderech. Here, this word has 4 syllables, and I wanted to show that you actually have 3 Shevas in this word. So let's see, as an example, Uv lech techa baderech. The first Sheva that's underneath the vet is a Sheva Nach. Why? Rule number 10. It is following a Vav HaChibbur. Then the Sheva underneath the Chaf is a Sheva Nach. Why? Because, first of all, it's following a Tenuah Ketana. The letter before it is a Segol, has a Segol. This is a Sheva in the middle of the word. Our default rule is that it's a Sheva Nach. And also, it has a Segol before it, which is a Tenuah Ketana. But then, we also have another rule, that if you have two Shevas in a row, the first one is silent as a Sheva Nach, and the second one is Sheva Na is pronounced. So you see the Chaf has a Sheva and the Tav also has a Sheva. So following that rule, the Chaf is going to be silent and the Tav will be a Sheva Na. And then you have another rule. There's a Dagesh in the Tav that's telling you that this is a Sheva Na. All of these rules are interconnected. That really, when you see the Chaf and the Chaf and the Tav, you know two Shvaim in a row. First is a Sheva Nach, the second is a Sheva Na. What I'm pointing out is each of those chavs, you have another way of approaching it. The chaf has a sheva that's after a tenuah ketana. The taf has a sheva that's with a letter that has a dagesh in it. So that's those rules align in this case. Okay, so this is a jam-packed word, but for the purpose of rule number 10, the word is read as uv lechtecha. Now let's look at that first line of the Shema Yisrael. And I want to break this down a little bit, and this will be really a preview for our last and final video. This line is from Ve'ahavta Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha ubchol nafshecha ubchol meodecha. I want to read each word here and help us to spot all of the Shevas and start to think about specifically this rule, but other rules as well. The first word is bechol. That bet has a Sheva Na under it. Why? Because it's a Sheva berosh milah. Now, I'll just mention, by the way, that I'm pronouncing this as bechol. I'm not pronouncing it as bechal. Why am I reading it as chol? Because that chaf has a kamatz katan underneath it, which is a tenuah ketana. It's not relevant for the rules of Sheva here, but that letter, that chaf has a o sound because it's a tenuah ketana. Bechol. Let's look at levavecha. Le, the lamed has a shava because shava b'rosh milah. Leva vecha. Why am I reading that second vet that has a shava underneath it? Why am I reading it as a shava na? B'chol leva vecha. That is a shava na. How do I know? Because the kamatz before it is a tenuah gedolah. And since the kamatz before it is a tenuah gedolah, that is a shava that's following a tenuah gedolah. It's a shava na. Also, look at the ta'amim. The vet has a ma'amid, the chaf has a ma'arich. So between, it's sandwiched. That vet in the word levavecha is sandwiched between a ma'amid and a tam. It's a sheva na. That's another way to arrive at this rule. So you have bechol levavecha. Now we get to our word for this rule, uv chol. This word is read as uv chol. Why is it not uvechol? Why is it not three syllables as uvechol? The answer is because of rule number 10. The Vav HaChibbur at the beginning of the word makes that Sheva under the second letter a Sheva Nach. Why is it so confusing? Because someone will read the first phrase and say bechol levavecha, and then they'll simply parallel that and say u bechol nafshecha. But that's incorrect. Because of this rule, uvchol, uv Sheva Nach, chol, nafshecha. What about the word nafshecha? Just for the purpose of completion, nafshecha has two shevas in a row. The first one is silent. The second one is Sheva Na. So that is read as nafshecha. And let's read the third phrase, uvchol, same idea. Why is the vet having a Sheva Nach? Because it's following a Vav HaChibbur, and therefore it is uvchol. And the last word, me'odecha, the mem has a Sheva Na underneath it. Okay, this will be our final rule bank slide, so I encourage you to take a screenshot, save this for yourself for later. Let's go through the 10 rules that we learned for Sheva Na and Sheva Nach. Rule number 1, a Sheva at the beginning of the word is a Sheva Na. Rule number 2, a Sheva under a letter with a dagesh, Sheva Na. Rule number 3, if you have two Shevas in a row, the first is Sheva Nach and silent, the second is Sheva Na. Rule number 4, if you have a Sheva at the end of the word, that is a Sheva Nach. And as we mentioned, even if you have two Shevaim at the end of the word, they are both Nach. Rule number 5, if you have twin letters, the letter is repeated, and there's a Sheva underneath the first, that Sheva is pronounced as a Sheva Na. Rule number 6, if you have a Sheva underneath one of the 4 silent letters of Aleph, He, Het, or Ayin, that is a Sheva Nach. Just as the letter is silent, so too the Sheva is silent. Rule number 7, if you have a Sheva in the middle of the word, and really this rule, once we've learned the additional rules, it really should be removed because the following rule qualifies it. But rule number 7 is that the Sheva in the middle of the word is normally Sheva Nach. And rule number 8 clarifies that if it's following a Tenuah Gedolah, it's a Sheva Na. But if it's following a Tenuah Ketana, it's a Sheva Nach. Rule number 9 is where we introduce the ta'amim, that if you have a letter with a Sheva underneath it, and it is sandwiched between 2 ta'amim, or sandwiched between a ma'amid and a ta'am, that is going to be pronounced as a Sheva Na. It's pronounced, and we showed an example of Bechol Levavecha. And finally, the last rule that we're learning is Vav HaChibbur, a Vav at the beginning of the word that means and. It turns into U, and the following Sheva underneath the second letter of the word is a Sheva Nach. In our next video, we will have our final video of this series, where we put all of these learnings into practice. We will be having a guided reading or a guided practice of the first paragraph of the Shema Yisrael. We'll look at the first paragraph together. We'll search for all of the Shevas. We'll identify whether that is a Sheva Na or a Sheva Nach, and we'll justify by giving the rule that helps us to know whether it's a Sheva Na or a Sheva Nach. This will be a beautiful way of taking all of our learning, bringing it together, and apply it. Apply it to the first paragraph of the Shema Yisrael, apply our learnings to reading the Torah better, to reading the Tefillah better, and hopefully taking this learning with us beyond. It's very exciting for us to be closing off the series. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question section below. I'll see you next time.